Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Safe Defend Live. Of course, joined again by Director of Training, Dr. Greg Vecchi. This morning, Dr. Vecchi, how are you, sir?
How are you doing? Well, Phil, how are you? Good to be here.
I tell everybody all the time, I'm still bald and chubby, so not much has changed. I'm right where I was the last time I saw you. Hey, I do appreciate you being here. We've got a lot of exciting things coming down the pike for Safe Defend, and most importantly for our customers and for the people that we serve, and we help. Let's tell us a little talk about the Safe Defend Academy coming up.
Well, we're basically, kind of starting a better way of training, in my opinion, right? And so it's going to be really helpful for, the people who are going to be taking the training, listening to shows like this, and especially, our clients and customers and things like this who have our system. First and foremost, as most people know, but maybe not, right, is that what really sets Safe Defend apart in terms of the system is that it focuses on the time gap between the notification of the law enforcement or the police and the actual time that they arrive at the scene, right? And those precious 15 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe in rural areas, it could be as long as a half hour, really depending on the resources of the department. Whatever that gap is, that's the main focus where the system comes in. So that's one aspect of training to talk about, right? And then the other aspect of training is educational pieces, as well as training on things to do to prepare for that, things to do to possibly prevent that, and pulling from evidence-based research and best practices.
Okay, so walk me through some of we talk about the once the notifications made, and there's that time frame between notification made to the good guys and good guys showing up. Walk us through that. I mean, what are some things we can do there to prepare ourselves?
Well, we've always heard the old adage, a thing that's always out there, right? Everybody talks about, right? Now, Alice training is the other thing, is that run, hide, and fight thing, right? And when you really look at it from a research perspective, you look at it from a training perspective, you gotta be a little bit more discreet on those, on those terms, right? Because definitions or words are important, right?
Yep.
Okay. Words can make the difference between success and failure, right? And I'll give you an example. I've had trainings where I'm asked about terrorism, right? And specifically suicide bombers. I was in Iraq for a number of months with the FBI, and we were basically picking up body parts and stuff from suicide bombings and doing all the forensics over there and stuff like this. And from a negotiation or hostage negotiation perspective, right? The question is, gosh, can you negotiate with a terrorist, specifically a suicide bomber, right? People throw that out, right? And then I'm always coming back and said, well, it depends, because words are important. And so they always say, well, what do you mean words are important? And I said, they're critically important. So I listen for what they're saying to me. If this alleged terrorist or this suicide bomber, says, I'm willing to die, okay, versus I want to die, there's two immediate reactions to that. Willing means I can negotiate. Wanting to die means I need to get the hell out of there, right? And so these words are important, right? And that I've learned that through years of doing crisis, hostage negotiation, crisis intervention and stuff, because in those areas, right, it's really the only law enforcement action that you're actually engaging the offender while he or she is committing the crime. Everything else is either before or after the fact. So it's kind of a unique, it's a unique understanding of offenders, right? Well, if we put this back to the Safe Defend model and the Safe Defend Academy and this run, hide, fight, well, we're really talking about avoiding and evading and engaging. Really, those are better terms in terms of research and training, right? Avoiding is just getting yourself out of the way of the threat, right? That's your run, right? And evasion is things like barricading, locking the door, things like that you can do, as well as cover and concealment, right? There's a big difference between cover and concealment, right? And if you're hiding behind a thin wall, just most walls in most buildings, and the offender could shoot through that wall and still get you. That's not cover, right? So understanding the difference between cover and concealment, for example, can make the difference between survival and being injured or dying, right? And also in helping others, like students, right? Like a teacher who is trying to protect their students and things like that. So just the fact that you're hiding is really not a discrete enough definition for me, because hiding could be taking cover, taking concealment. It could be barricading. There's a whole bunch that goes into that, and that drives the training, right? And then the last thing is when we're talking about, you hear the word fight. Well, that's essentially engaging the offender. And when we think about engaging the offender, obviously we think about, oh, we're going to pull, he sticks his hand through the door, he breaks the window, we, crack the hand, and we pull him in, we spray, pepper spray in his eyes and all that stuff. Well, that's all well and good. And certainly we train that, right? And there are enhanced ways to make that a little bit better. But you also forget the fact that, you're also dealing with a human being, right? And human beings respond not only to physical engagement, but also verbal engagement, right? And so more of a tactical negotiation. We've had situations where, for example, you have a school shooter, right? And he's already shot up a number of people. And the teacher who knows that kid says, "Hey, Johnny, put down that gun." And the kid has actually put down the gun, right?
Right.
And the reason is because, well, part of the research shows is that some students, some offenders get all into these violent video games, right? And they're playing all these, shoot 'em up games. And frankly, they get very good at tactics. They get very good at marksmanship and things like this. And it's amazing how those skills in the video transfer to real life, right? Minus the recoil. So here's the issue, right? Is that a lot of kids are playing their video games at night, right? In the evening, right? Mom comes in and says, "Johnny, put the thing down. It's time for dinner." He puts it down. He goes to dinner. He comes back. He plays. Okay, he's playing for a while. "Johnny, put it down and go and get your homework done." He goes, gets the homework done, right? And he goes back to playing. Okay, "Johnny, put it down, go to bed." You get the picture, right? Okay. Well, this is conditioning, right? This is actually muscle memory training conditioning. It's not intended, obviously, but there have been instances where students who have just killed a number of people, right, or tried to commit a violence, has actually responded to a verbal, "Hey, put that down," because it goes back to conditioned reflex. Now, is that always going to work? No, of course not. But these are some of the considerations we're looking for at Safe Defend Academy here that makes it different, right? Because it's based on research, driving training and training driving the operations or the skill sets, right? And we're breaking it down between not just training, right, but education and training. The actual better term for me is director of education and training, because education is knowledge, right, and training is skills-based activity, right? And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do.
Well, and I think, you talked a little bit about, you and I have, obviously I was never an FBI agent, but we've both been in combat situations. And I think that one of those things that, people, they hear said, but they don't really think about is fog of war, and when you're in a engagement, when you're engaging somebody, a bad guy, we all think we know how we're going to react, but you don't know how you're going to react till you're in that situation.
Oh, that's exactly right. Absolutely.
And we've all seen people in training scenarios that were phenomenal in training scenarios, and they got in a real world situation, and maybe the person that just did okay in a training situation, there is reality that some people, their heart rates slow down in those environments. They become more laser focused. They think clear, which is crazy. Those are the people that make great operators, but that is what happens. It's much like athletes, great quarterbacks, everything slows down for them. It's going 1,000,000 miles an hour for everybody else, but for them, it's almost like it's in slow motion. They just see things better, they react better. But training and repetition is the only thing that we have to really prepare ourselves for those things. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't have said it any better, Phil. I'm serious. That's the second thing. My second point of this, right, is first is you got to have very, discrete definitions, right, that mean something. Words mean something, right? And then you got to be able to train it based on best practices and evidence-based empirical training, right?
Right.
The second thing is a training, even though it's all evidence-based and it's based on best practices and it's empirical research, got all that stuff, all that nerdy, academic stuff to back it up, right? And it still fails, right? And so that's what you're addressing, is the fact that the training has got to be done, the techniques or the approach to training has got to be done so it works during the body alarm response. Okay. And the body alarm response is just what you said, right? When anyone feels a threat to their physical, mental, emotional well-being, okay, their caveman brain takes over, right?
Yep.
We call it I'm going to mispronounce this, the amygdala hijack, right? Okay. And so if you break down the brain, right, you got your thinking brain, your feeling brain, and your body brain, right? And that's the simple thing I like to say in my trainings, right? But the more, I guess, proper terms is you've got your frontal cortex, right?
Right.
Then your mammalian brain, right, where the emotions take over, right? And then your reptilian brain, right, which is like your brainstem and stuff that handles all that autonomic stuff, right? And the focus is that this training has got to work when your feeling brain is taken over, right? Because that's when you experience sympathetic nervous system take over. What we talked about, like you just mentioned, right? You got faster pulse, higher blood pressure, pullback in the blood, right?
Yep.
We have tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, things like this. And this is stuff that you cannot stop. That is, it's physically impossible to stop that. So therefore, we have to be able to embrace that state of mind or that state of physiology, right? Okay, and then make the training work under those circumstances. And that's the other thing that we're trying to do here, is because we want it to work in the real emergency. Because it doesn't matter if I'm relaxed and I have all this training and stuff like this, but it's not muscle memory and it's not instinctive, so to speak, right? I want to be able to have the students, myself, I'm trained like this myself all the time. You got to be thinking ambush. You got to be thinking of threats to your life, serious bodily injury, things like this. How can I deal with a situation like that? Now going back to safe defend again, especially in those precious seconds between notification of the police and the response of the police.
Well, and I think one thing I've always said, Dave's sitting off camera here, but my business partner Dave, who's spent more time in combat than all of us, but Dave, what we discuss is it's also not having a victim's mentality. I think so many times you see these shootings, you always hear about the heroic actions, and we do see heroic actions. I go back to the shooting in Tulsa earlier this year at the hospital, where an active duty military member gave his own life protecting others, holding the door, and knew he wasn't going to make it out, but he made the decision that he was going to make sure others did live. Obviously a very heroic decision. He decided he wasn't going to be a victim. He was going to be active in his actions. And I think that a big part of this, when you see these mass shootings, it's where people are waiting. They're just waiting, and we've got to still, with training, you can make better decisions in those environments. And that's what we're working towards. Teachers aren't combat operators. To be quite frank, most law enforcement officers that respond to these incidents, at least the ones that are first on scene, they're going to go from writing citations and dealing with a loose dog in most scenarios. I'm not diminishing what they do every day, but we take these non-combat scenarios and we throw them into where we're asking them to be operators in a split second. And, so everybody's got to have this, I think, attitude shift, paradigm shift of how we look at these situations. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And with good training comes confidence. A lot of people just want to know what to do, have an idea of what to do. They just don't have any clue. And it's kind of that unknown, right? It's kind of like, I don't even know what to do, right? That's what they say. That's what I hear all the time. Yeah, I go and I've talked to teachers, I've talked to non-military, non-operators, non-police a lot, right, in my trainings, and all they want is they just want to have an idea what to do, and they want to know that they can do it confidently, and they want to know that they got at least a chance to do it. Because here's the deal, right? I've seen this. I'm in front of teachers and superintendents and things like this. They love their kids, right?
Yeah.
And they'll do anything to protect their kids, right? And so that's they've already got the mindset for that,
right?
But it's a matter of giving them the confidence and skills to be able to flourish in that environment, right? Not just survive. I'm not about, oh God, you just have to survive this. You want to be more than that, right? You want to be able to flourish in this, not just survive, but be healthy afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Actually, do more. And I think just having a survival attitude is not much more than a victim attitude, really, in my opinion.
I think one of the things, we just had one of our viewers just let me know that my microphone's not on, but the other mic's picking it up. I appreciate that. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to move the mics closer so I know which mic. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we'll pick it up for sure now. I got the three sitting here in front of me. But I think one of the things that I want to wrap up with is says Ronnie's mic is on. So this is Ronnie's mic. Is that better? Maybe that's better. They can tell.
Yeah, you're louder. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up here in a few minutes. But I think what I want to just echo before I give you last words is what you were just talking about, how these teachers they'll do anything for their kids. My wife, retired school teacher, mother, veteran, the most badass person I know in my life, truly. But as a teacher, as a special education teacher, I can promise you, we've talked about scenarios, and I think my wife's like most teachers, they're all in. I mean, they're there to protect those babies. They want to ahead of themselves. And we've seen that time and time again, these heroic actions of teachers taken where they've done things to save their children. And I think that, we have a responsibility. I truly believe this, whether it's at the Safe Defend level, at the administration level, the community level, to support these teachers, to make sure that they have everything possible to be as successful as they can in a horrific situation, because you're right, they're all in. They're going to protect those children above anything else. If you know teachers, that's their mindset.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And so I just kind of want to, I guess, end by just saying that, we want to give them the tools. We want them to be confident, to do more than just survive. We certainly don't want to be a victim, right? And I think that, the approach to that, based on, my research and experience and everything, is that the training has to be evidence-based and best practice. It's got to be done during the body alarm response. Okay. And you got to have both education and training, both left and right of bang, meaning preventive before it happens, and of course after it happens, and especially during that time frame, that critical time gap between law enforcement notification and response.
I agree, Dr. Vecchi, and I appreciate you bringing. I love the left of bang, right of bang. I love they're not an active shooter; they're an active killer. And we got to quit. We got to quit talking around these tough subjects. We got to call it what it is. We got to be very intentional with our actions on how we're going to combat these situations. We can't eliminate people doing bad things, but we can sure be prepared for when it happens. And that's what Safe Defend's all about. If you got questions, or if you just want to talk to Dr. Vecchi, you can reach him at greg.vecchi@safedefend.com. Dr. Vecchi, I'm excited. We're putting together some other podcasts. He's going to be bringing some other things to the table with Safe Defend, and in addition to Safe Defend. And so we look forward to that as well. Dr. Vecchi, have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks a lot, Phil. You too. Thanks so much.
Thanks, brother.